8 o'clock, this is Channel 5, KTLA Los Angeles, with a reminder not to waste energy. How many lights are on in your house right now? A Journey to a Dream, San Simeon, is brought to you in part by Western Airlines, offering first-class leg space to every passenger and complimentary champagne to every adult on every flight. And by the Chic Centers for the Control of Smoking.
A castle, not on a moated plain in Spain, nor perched on a rocky crag above the Rhine, but a castle on a hilltop overlooking the California coastline, a living monument to the whim and fancy of the man who made it happen, William Randolph Hearst. Filled with the riches of the world and the arts of antiquity, the castle at San Simeon has become one of the most remarkable attractions in all of California. We are going to visit the enchanted hilltop, see it from a unique vantage point, an aerial perspective few people have ever experienced. This is Ricardo Maltalban inviting you to join me for a most unusual helicopter trip from Los Angeles to San Simeon, following the same roads Mr. Hearst and his guests used to take 40 years ago.
The pleasure of someone else is something very important to me in love. It would be true, even if I weren't who I am. To be able to know what he's feeling, or to guess. Because pleasing him is my way of pleasing myself, even in little things. So he gives me Chanel No. 5 perfume and eau de cologne. You don't have to ask for it. He knows what you want. Chanel.
I spend a lot of time outdoors, and I like my coffee. You're looking for the cigarette? Not me. I'm Chuck Connors, and I don't need any cigarette. Oh, I was hooked for a long time. I tried to quit, but found it's not so easy. Until I went to the Chic Center for the Control of Smoking. And just like thousands of others, I finally broke the habit. Call this number if you want some help.
Some music would be nice. Oh, thank you. Some Hawaiian music. Perhaps something more contemporary. On second thought, I'd like the 1812 Overture with cannon. With cannon? Western Airlines, the only way to fly.
Welcome, fellow Americans. Welcome to Puerto Rico. Welcome, fellow Americans. Welcome to Puerto Rico. Welcome to our plazas. Welcome to our fun. Welcome to El Morro. Welcome to our sun. Welcome, fellow Americans. Welcome to Puerto Rico.
The castle atop the enchanted hill is surrounded by over 100 acres of gardens, terraces, pools, and guest houses. It is located more than 250 miles from Los Angeles. Its twin towers, 137 feet high, are patterned after a Spanish cathedral. Mr. Hearst especially liked their design. Mr. Hearst's Herald-Examiner newspaper building downtown Los Angeles shows a marked similarity. It was from here that he often started his trips to San Simeon. That was before Los Angeles had a modern skyline. The city was built close to the ground in Mr. Hearst's days. There were no freeways, so he would drive out Wilshire Boulevard to the ocean. Mr. Hearst used to meet his weekend guests for San Simeon at the Ambassador Hotel on Wilshire. Everyone would be assigned to a chauffeured limousine, and the procession of cars would drive up the coast to the castle. And how Wilshire Boulevard has changed since Mr. Hearst's days. This new mirrored building on Wilshire reflects the growing skyline of the city. It captures the changing mood of the sky and surroundings. In the center, the reflection of the unique TELECOPTER that is taking us to San Simeon. It is a telecopter rather than a helicopter because it is the world's only flying television station. Only a handful of people have had the experience of flying low along the California coastline and seeing the beauty of the state from this unique vantage point. The Santa Monica Freeway joins the Pacific Coast Highway just south of where Wilshire ends at the Pacific Ocean. Mr. Hearst was very familiar with the mile-long Palisades Park with its towering palms and green lawn. The Santa Monica skyline atop the Palisades is mostly new since those days in the 1930s when the Hearst caravan drove by. The beach homes once owned by the motion picture stars of those early days are still here. Hearst was closely connected with the big names of the movie world. Mary Pickford, Buddy Rogers, Lionel Barrymore, Clark Gable, Carol Lombard, Robert Taylor. Some of the stars who were his frequent visitors. But San Simeon was 250 miles away. So, Hearst built another castle closer to the city, here on the sands of Santa Monica Beach. Some of it remains today. The three-story U-shaped main house is gone, but this section of the colonial complex remains. At one time, there were 5 interconnected houses with over 100 rooms and 55 bathrooms. Colonial pillars were everywhere. Mr. Hearst used the same building technique here as at San Simeon. Entire antique rooms were imported and built into the house. It was lavishly decorated, but was more informal than the castle on the hilltop. The beach house later became the property of motion picture star Marion Davis. It is a beach club today. Among the foreboding sights you see today on a trip up the coast, the crumbling cliffs on the Palisades just north of the Santa Monica Canyon. When the Hearst caravan passed here in the 1930s, the homes atop the Palisades had expansive backyards, 100 feet or more, between them and the cliff's edge. The owners, standing in their gardens, looking out over the blue Pacific, had a panoramic view of Santa Monica that was unparalleled. But over the years, these backyards gradually slipped away as earthslide after earthslide cut away the land. Today, patios, lookout points, and fences dangle over the precipice high above the Pacific Coast Highway directly below. Yet, even with the continuing erosion, people still live in these homes, choosing to stay and enjoy their view of the Pacific and trying not to worry about their precarious position on the hill. Okay, let's go. We're on our way up the coast to San Simeon. The famous Malibu Pier, the first of many picturesque piers we will see on our way to San Simeon. Even when Malibu was a small beach community, this was a favorite fishing spot. The clean white lines attracting sportsmen from all over the Southland. Even though Malibu has experienced tremendous growth in recent years, it maintains a small town atmosphere, peaceful, serene. While it is deserted today, this is one of the best surfing beaches on the coast. But the surfers in their wetsuits have abandoned the surf to this delightful lady. glimpse of Malibu's motion picture colony, just north of the pier. Recall many of the famous celebrities who lived here. Warner Baxter, Charles Boyer, Brian Donlevy. It was truly a movie colony in the 1930s. I'll bet the celebrities traveling in the Hearst caravan in those early days would find it hard to believe that today, Malibu has its own university. Just beyond the colony, on a knoll overlooking the Pacific, the new campus of Pepperdine. The modern adobe-colored buildings with the traditional arches and Spanish tile of old Mexico, a reminder of the rich Latin heritage of California. But today and yesterday, this part of the California coast is known for the rugged beauty of its shoreline, the Malibu. It still offers isolation to the solitary fisherman as he stands in the wind and feels the salt spray on his face.
You know, of course, that I don't smoke anymore. Yes, I did for years and wound up with lung cancer. Even so, I had a terrible time getting off of them. Boy, I wish we'd had a chic stop smoking program around then. Now, I've been to one of the centers, and I've seen how they do it, and I've talked to some of the people that have been through it. And I'm telling you, it works. Do you really want to quit smoking? Call Chic in Los Angeles, 520-8000.
Now, a nice cup of coffee, please.
Down from the hills, cha-cha-cha, with the very freshest coffee beans, cha-cha-cha, cha-cha-cha, coffee beans, cha-cha-cha, coffee beans, cha-cha-cha, coffee beans, cha-cha.
Spectacular. Western Airlines, the only way to fly.
The girls, they don't go for me. I can't figure it.
What's the matter with you? Nice-looking boy. Don't you know about fashion?
Van Heusen brings back the button-down with longer collars and a lean tapered fit on the stylish 417 shirt.
How can I thank you?
Don't worry, I'll think of something.
The Telecopter would have been a strange sight in those days when the caravan of black limousines carried Mr. Hearst's party along the coast to San Simeon. The highway has been widened and improved, although it follows basically the same route today. It's still open country. There are some homes, a few ranches, an acre or two for those who can afford to get away from the pressures of city life. But basically, this part of the Malibu is pretty much the same as when the chauffeured limousines of celebrities passed by. The coast highway is like a concrete ribbon tying the coastline together. It is easy driving with a beautiful view in both directions. You can't see everything from the highway. There are many inlets and coves that break up the smooth, clean lines of sand and water. The highway is so close to the ocean, you feel it is a part of the seascape. The old road used to go around what is now called Mugu Rock. It's a landmark now. It was created when the engineers cut through the mountain to make a safer and faster road. You can still see traces of the narrow old road that circled the rock and hung dangerously above the ocean. When the Hearst party would drive by, there was always the danger of falling rocks and frequent slides in the rainy season. In those days, this section of the coastline was miles from a town. Open, desolate, just sand and water and mountains. Perhaps just as my forefathers discovered it many, many years ago. Today, the rock means you are near the Point Mugu Naval Air Station, the headquarters for the entire Pacific Missile Range. The controversial F-14 fighter plane was tried and tested from the runways of Point Mugu. base is a city unto itself. About 8,000 people work here. More than 1,000 live on the base. Each year, a space fair is held here and nearly 200,000 persons visit it. Almost next door is Port Hueneme, the only commercial harbor between Los Angeles and San Francisco. Almost every day, large tankers and freighters leave here bound for the harbors of the world. Port Hueneme is the home base for the Navy Seabees. It was developed during World War II into the large facility it is today. A sad reminder of happier times is aground off the entrance to Port Hueneme. It is the La Janelle, once an ocean-going luxury ship. There were plans to make it a floating restaurant. Then a severe winter storm hit the area. Heavy tides spawned by Pacific winds threw the empty ship onto the beach, and it became hopelessly trapped aground. There were many attempts to salvage it, but the end result, the La Janelle became a giant rusting hulk. There it sits, half ashore, whipped by the tide and wind, trapped. Recently it was declared the property of the State Lands Commission, mainly because it was more part of the land than part of the sea. Now it is going to become a fishing pier, a step down for the once proud and once beautiful ship, but it is better than extinction, and the La Janelle will serve once again. The city of Oxnard is just north of Port Hueneme. One of the newest developments in Oxnard is the Channel Islands Marina. It's man-made. Before there was nothing but sand dunes. Now there are more than 1,000 boats docked here. With homes and apartments, it is a complete recreation harbor. The desire to be next to the sea had its pitfalls here too. These homes are the lucky ones. They have been saved from tides, but only after several hundred tons of rocks were brought in to stop the damaging high waves. A few houses along the beaches were pounded to bits by the crashing wave action. Better precautions have now been taken to make sure it doesn't happen again. Just north of Oxnard is the city of Ventura. It is the center of the commercial and business interests of Ventura County. It is a major agricultural center and the headquarters for the county government. This is the center of the largest lemon-producing county in the United States. Freight trains carrying the lemon crop cross the continent and serve the markets of the world. It is also the home of the Mission San Buenaventura, dating from 1782. This present mission church was built on this site in 1809 by the Franciscan Fathers. Here was a little mission church surrounded by open lands and sagebrush. Now situated right in the center of town, part of the Spanish past of California. It's open country and a new freeway as we leave Ventura and go on our way to Santa Barbara. The Santa Barbara coast has a major oil field under its waters, one of the largest yet discovered. Some of the offshore islands are connected by piers to the shore. Some of them have sprouted palm trees and tropical gardens as part of a beautification project. There are more drilling islands several miles off the coast. And here is the harbor of Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara has the reputation of being the ideal place to live. Its moderate climate, its mountains, its ocean attract people from all over the country.
We got the Lepselters together to prove a point, and here's a reenactment of what actually happened. They took 70 flash pictures in one evening with Sylvania Blue Dot Magic Cubes and never missed a flash. They might have done even better, because our lab tests show that Blue Dot Magic Cubes work 99.6% of the time. Still, the Lepselters got a lot of flash pictures, but then there are a lot of Lepselters. Be sure you have plenty of Sylvania Blue Dot Magic Cubes around for the holidays.
Over the years, I've tried to sell a lot of goods and services in which I had confidence, but none has ever been more important than the Schick Centers for the Control of Smoking. Thousands of smokers who thought they could never beat the habit have found here the help they needed. Now, I've seen the program, and I've talked to the people who have been helped. It works. They quit, and so can you. Call Schick in Los Angeles, 520-8000.
Maybe a deck of cards would be fun. Amazing! Western Airlines, the only way to fly.
The Santa Barbara Harbor was in use in the mission days. Today, it is enclosed with a breakwater and 4 separate marinas. More than 700 boats and yachts are home ported here. There are many commercial fishing boats working out of the harbor. The bay serves as a recreational center for this mission city. The Santa Barbara Mission has long claimed the title Queen of the Missions, and for good reason. In a beautiful setting against the hills, the mission is an example of the earliest Spanish Renaissance architecture. It has a museum containing early Indian and Mexican art. The red Spanish tile and the mission style is seen throughout Santa Barbara in public and private buildings. The Spanish architecture gives the city a unity of design all its own. Santa Barbara is also famous as an art colony. One of the delightful customs is the Sunday afternoon art show. It is held on the green lawn of the park that lines the beach. Under the tall palms, artists put up temporary displays and show their wares. You'll find everything on display: paintings, pottery, leatherwork, the latest designs. The same railroad runs along the coast as it did in Mr. Hearst's time. Often, instead of driving, he would invite his guests to take the train. Departing from the Glendale station in Southern California, they would arrive at San Luis Obispo about midnight. A new university has been built since Mr. Hearst drove through here. It is built right on the coastline, a picture setting for one of the outstanding institutions in the state university system. It is a huge, sprawling campus with the ocean on one side and the Santa Barbara Mountains on the other. It is the University of California at Santa Barbara. The highway moves inland as it climbs the mountains of the Gaviota Pass, a dramatic change from the populated world of the southern part of the state. This is where Mr. Hearst will be most at home today. From here on, the changes will be far less. Inland, a few miles, is one of the major changes, the town of Solvang. Solvang is famous for its Danish traditions, a town of windmills and old country architecture. Dark beams, thatched roofs, even a stork or two on the chimneys. It has shown tremendous growth in recent years. It is the site of the restored mission of Santa Ines, built in 1804. Once completely abandoned, it is fully rebuilt and a major religious center of the area. It has a museum of mission artifacts. Millions of tourists visit Solvang every year. This used to be the halfway stop on the trip. a small restaurant at Bulton, Anderson's. The Hearst caravan would take a break here. In those days, it was only a small cafe. Now it is a hotel, restaurant, and amusement park complex. From here on, we will fly for miles and see only green meadows and rolling hills, horses watering and cattle grazing the land. A beautiful pastoral setting so typical of this part of California. Because of its remoteness, there are few cars on the freeway and only a few hamlets to bypass. Just the open expanse of nature. The fiestas, rodeos, and hospitality of that romantic era are legendary. The only major town between Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo is Santa Maria, the home of Hancock College. This is the new terminal building at the Santa Maria Airport. Beyond Santa Maria again, the unchanged countryside. Flatlands giving way to mountains, orchards blending with trim white fences and dusty trails, and cattle running on the hillside. These open fields at one time were part of huge land grants given to loyal soldiers of the King of Spain. The land is much the same today as it was when it was part of the great rancheros, when California belonged to Spain. But it is a different story when the freeway meets the coast again. Those worthless and desolate sand dunes in Mr. Hearst's days have turned into a major recreation center. Near Grover City and Pismo Beach, the sand dunes have become a mecca for dune buggy enthusiasts. The speeding motorcycles share the beach sand with the buggies and horseback riders. This is their beach. Sportsmen haul their buggies and cycles for miles around to enjoy the beach, one of the few on the coast they can use. Any summer weekend, the sound of dune buggies and motorcycles fill the air. Just north, the high cliffs of Shell Beach. They are much the same now, except they are topped by homes and new developments. Most people just drive by here, never knowing the beauty of the white cliffs that fall straight into the sea. The Madonna Inn is a new landmark since the caravan of limousines went through here. It is at San Luis Obispo that you leave the freeway and turn off on Highway 1. A couple of deer. Even though the city is nearby, very often you see beautiful sights like this. Some call it the Gibraltar of the Pacific. It was first seen by the explorer Juan Cabrillo in the mid-1500s. He called it El Morro, since it looked like the turban headgear the Moors wore in Spain. It majestically guards Morro Bay. The town is a favorite seaside resort. It has a new marina and refurbished harbor. But the main attraction has to be the rock.
In 1886, Gustav Niebaum, founder of Inglenook Vineyards, built the most elaborate wine cellar America had ever seen. He felt that a great wine should have a stately home, and no expense was spared. His wish was to produce American wines that would equal and excel the most famous vintages of Europe, and in this he succeeded. For it is generally agreed that in Europe there are many great wines. In America, there is Inglenook.
I'm Chuck Connors. A while back, I quit cigarettes. I needed help to do it, and I got it from the Schick Center for the Control of Smoking. A lot of people heard me talk about it on TV, and some of them said, "Did you really quit at the Schick Center?" What they're really saying is, "Chuck, tell me again, because I want to believe I can quit smoking too." So I'm saying it again. If you want to quit smoking, call this number. It's important.
Some music would be nice. Oh, thank you. Some Hawaiian music. Perhaps something more contemporary. On second thought, I'd like the 1812 overture with canon. with cannon. Western Airlines, the only way to fly.
This is the last city on Highway 1 for more than 60 miles until you reach Big Sur on the Monterey coast. Cambria is another resort city. Tall pines cover the hills on both sides of the highway, sheltering hundreds of homes. The main street is just off the highway to your right. We couldn't figure out that bright patch of green. It looked like a swimming pool or a miniature golf course. It turned out to be the Lawn Bowling Green. Cambrians, in their bowling whites, spend many a weekend in the bowling tournaments. Highway 1 reaches the coast just beyond and turns towards San Simeon at the driftwood-covered Moonstone Beach. Sun-baked driftwood can be found in all shapes and sizes, from huge tree trunks to tiny poetic branches. The white bleached wood is continually moved by the changing tides. Nearly 7 million persons have visited the Hearst Castle at San Simeon since it was opened for tours by the state of California. Motel Row opened here to handle the large influx of visitors. This is just north of Cambria and 5 miles south of San Simeon. This is a change Mr. Hearst would have found difficult to believe. Motels and tourists just a few miles from his isolated castle. Visitors who wait their turn to tour their castle go to some of the local attractions. As we watch the land on our way to the castle, remember the meadows, the mountains, and the coastline was part of the Hearst Ranch. At one time, it consisted of 240,000 acres of ranch land along 50 miles of the California coast. He owned everything the eye could see. The group of girls sunning themselves on the big rocks to the left seemed to have spotted the telecopter. From the expression on their faces, you know they are enjoying their day of camping. The coastline below the castle is lonely and isolated. It's the home of birds and seals and wildlife, uncluttered by civilization, one of the last bastions of open land and sea. The white tower of a lighthouse, this lonely old beacon, is the only indication of man's presence. As we near 1976, the bicentennial year of the United States of America, there will be many programs showing the growth and changes of this great country. Here, in contrast, we see the changeless, the timeless quality of the land and the sea. The same now as it was 200 years ago when the Declaration of Independence was signed. The same now as it was 200 years ago when the beacon of liberty first shone brightly over this favored nation. Through those 200 years, while America grew to a country of over 200 million people, through wars, depressions, and the space age, this remains unchanged. The giant rocks, the foreboding cliffs still mark the coastline below San Simeon. The Santa Lucia Mountains, rugged and unspoiled by man, meet the sea with majestic dignity. Riding up Highway 1, you can see the same unchanged coast discovered by Juan Cabrillo in 1542. That was only 50 years after Columbus discovered America. Cabrillo was the first Western European to sail all the way up the California coast. After the era of the explorers, it was hundreds of years before any settler saw this coastline and changed the beauty of the land. Yet, today, you can travel Highway 1 and see this primeval beauty, follow the twists and turns as the highway hugs the hills and hangs precariously over the roaring sea below. Only Highway 1 is new to this setting. Like a necklace, it follows the mountain's edge as it touches the sea through some of the most spectacular scenery in the world. It is difficult to believe as you fly up this glorious coastline that this is the same state of California engulfed in problems of pollution, of smog, of traffic congestion and crowded population centers. This must be the place of the good life, the end of the rainbow, the enchanted hill. So it was here, on an estate of nearly 250,000 acres, a ranch half the size of the state of Rhode Island, that William Randolph Hearst decided to build his castle.
When I played the role of Jeff's mother on the original Lassie series, I was ashamed that off camera I was so thoroughly addicted to cigarettes. My own children were merciless about my smoking, and I wanted to quit, but I simply couldn't do it alone. But I finally found help, and I quit at the Schick Center for the Control of Smoking. I know a lot of you want help, too. Please call the Schick Center, especially the expectant mothers, and you grandmothers, too.
Maybe a deck of cards would be fun. Amazing! Western Airlines, the only way to fly.
For the love of life, you do your best.
Well, being a woman athlete today, it seems like it's becoming very important. Not only try to do my best, but I try to look my best.
For the love of life, you look your best.
But on top of that, being a female, to be able to look good and smell pretty. And I love the way I smell with the Fabergé cologne. And my favorite cologne is Tigress.
For the love of life, Fabergé.
This old building, boarded up and unused for years, is in a vacant field right in the center of San Simeon. This used to be a whaling village. It was here in the harbor that all of the building equipment, the steel, the iron, and other supplies were unloaded. Everything for the castle moved through here. The coastal steamers would tie up at the pier and unload their cargo. Mr. Hearst had the pier built in the small bay to handle just about everything. The building equipment was unloaded, placed aboard trucks, and hauled up the winding, narrow road to the castle. Our treasures from all over the world arrived in the same manner. Carved ceilings, staircases, stained glass windows. They were marked and classified and placed in the warehouses near the pier until the right place was found for them at the castle. Many of these artworks are still crated and stored in the warehouses. A reminder that the La Casa Grande atop the enchanted hill was never finished. The village of San Simeon dates back to those early days. Its buildings are some of the oldest structures on the entire coast. Sebastian's is still an operating general store. It sits near a few adobe and red tile roof buildings and a few warehouses. This is all there is to the village of San Simeon. The entrance to San Simeon Castle is directly behind the village. Nearly 7 million visitors have entered this gate to see the castle. In the old days, Mr. Hearst and his guests drove up the hill in those chauffeur-driven limousines. They had to travel on a very narrow and dangerous road. Today, visitors leave their cars in the large parking lot and take buses to the top. The roads are much improved, and it's clear sailing all the way. There is a story that Winston Churchill was delayed for over an hour on this road when a giraffe stood in front of his car and refused to move. It is a 5-mile ride up the hillside, and the guides do everything possible to get you into the mood for the exciting visit. For it is like stepping back in time to another world, to a place that didn't really exist, a fantasy land. But then you see it. The castle of William Randolph Hearst sitting majestically on a hilltop in the Santa Lucia Mountains overlooking the California coast.
Over 1 million people buy pickups each year, mostly from 2 big companies. But there's another pickup. Like its big competitors, it has a wide range of options, a smooth ride, and easy handling. In fact, the only thing it doesn't have is a familiar pickup name. International, the other pickup.
Tree International, travel all scouts and pickups. See your International dealer. Take a test drive.
Shadows above your eyes are soft and pretty.
But shadows below your eyes like these just don't belong. So Maybelline offers Cover Stick. Just blend it on wherever you want a little cover-up for a flawless look.
5 shades.
Just match the tube color to your makeup.
Cover Stick by Maybelline.
Keeps those dark circles out of sight.
Beautifully.
Maybelline Cover Stick. Fine eye makeup sensibly priced.
Maybelline.
Next to Sebastian's in the harbor at San Simeon, there is a coin-operated telescope. Squinting through it was the only way the public could get a close-up view of the castle before the state of California opened it up for tours in 1964. During Hearst's lifetime, it was the meeting place for the influential of the world. President Calvin Coolidge, Winston Churchill, George Bernard Shaw, General Douglas MacArthur, Bernard Baruch, Charles Lindbergh, New York Mayor Jimmy Walker, all were guests at this baronial castle that William Randolph Hearst called home. Mr. Hearst owned it from horizon to horizon, nearly 250,000 acres. It was built on the family ranch, first purchased by his father, Senator George Hearst, who made his fortune in mining discoveries. His investments in the Comstock Lode in Nevada and Montana's Anaconda mines made him fabulously wealthy. The castle is built on what was known as Camp Hill. It was the family's camping grounds. Young William Randolph Hearst spent many summer outings there with family and friends. Brightly colored tents would be set up, and a chuck wagon would bring up food and supplies. Young Hearst never forgot those glorious years. When he made his own fortune as a journalist, publisher, and newspaper chain owner, he made a youthful dream a reality. He built the castle on Camp Hill. Starting in 1919, he transformed this barren hilltop into an exotic garden and built what will probably be the last and most elaborate castle in our times. The first thing he had to do was cover the barren soil. He hauled up fresh topsoil from below. Each load of dirt was brought up the narrow winding roads. Next, he imported trees, plants, and vines from all over the world, treated them to special soil so they could grow in this special climate. He blended them with gnarled old oaks that had grown on the hillside for 100 years. He even uprooted the oaks and moved them to a more desirable location. He transformed the entire hilltop. The castle is Spanish Renaissance in design. It is built of reinforced concrete and will probably last 1,000 years. It shares the hilltop with 3 other mansions, or guest houses, the Casa del Mar, Casa del Monte, and Casa del Sol. Much of the building was done under the personal direction of Hearst. This is one of the 3 guest houses on the Enchanted Hill, La Casa del Sol. It was named for its spectacular view of the setting sun. Like La Casa Grande, these guest houses are filled with art objects, antiques, the priceless possessions of the centuries. A copy of Donatello's David is atop the 17th century Venetian fountain in front of La Casa del Sol. On the upper balcony above the door, an authentic sarcophagus, a burial vault dating from the days of ancient Rome. Spanish and Florentine wrought iron covers the doors and windows of La Casa del Sol. Looking at the lush gardens now, it is difficult to believe that all of these plants, trees, shrubs, bushes, and vines were planted here by Mr. Hearst. He had an army of experienced gardeners working full-time to bring this garden to life and keep it in its full beauty. They did most of their work at night, so that they would not be in the way of Hearst or his guests. There is a story that one tree did not blend with the others. He ordered the gardeners to move it and replant it. They did it at the cost of $50,000. There are 2 magnificent swimming pools on the hilltop. The indoor pool is under the flat building to your left, called the Roman Pool. It is so large, there was room for 2 tennis courts on the roof covering it. The Roman pool cost over $1 million, and workers using imported tiles spent over 3 years to build it. It is said that Hearst spent $1 million a year for 50 years to collect the treasures for his castle. The priceless possessions of the centuries were assembled and blended into a unity that is the Hearst Castle at San Simeon. Statues, colonnades, pillars, objects of art grace the exteriors, the terraces, the gardens, the pathways. In this terrace, a level below the Casa Grande, is the oldest of all the artworks on the hill. It is the Egyptian statue of the goddess of war, Sekhmet, a lion's head on a woman's body. It dates back nearly 3,500 years. Golden tile covers the domes of the Twin Towers. The Hispano-Moresque towers contain 36 Belgian carillon bells that sent music over the Santa Lucia hills. The blue waters of the Neptune pool are framed by the Etruscan colonnades on both ends. The Neptune pool cost over $1 million. It is made entirely of marble. It contains 350,000 gallons of mountain spring water. In Hearst's days, it was heated year-round. The authentic Greco-Roman temple facade facing the pool is pre-Christian in origin. It is not a single piece, however, but it's made up of several parts of ancient structures. The columns, the marble carvings, the statues were assembled and combined to make the impressive building that guards the pool. one time, the zoo at San Simeon was the largest private collection in the world. Lions, panthers, cheetahs, monkeys, and even a polar bear were housed in these now empty cages. Other grazing animals were protected by an 8-foot-high fence that ran for over 10 miles. Wild animals were able to roam free over the ranch. There were plenty of riding trails for the weekend visitors. Mr. Hearst had a famous grape arbor. Parts of it still can be seen. It circled much of the hillside. His guests frequently rode their horses under the shade of the grape arbor. Mr. Hearst started work on his enchanted hill in 1919. The 3 guest houses were the first structures to be completed. They are mansions in their own right. They are built in the Mediterranean style. The largest of the 3 is Casa del Mar. It contains 46 rooms and is built on 3 levels down the hill. In 1922, it became a permanent residence for the Hearst family. It was in 1922 that work actually started on La Casa Grande. It was under construction for 28 years until 1947. It was never completed. Some areas remain unfinished today. It will probably never be finished. Almost 7 million visitors have toured this fantastic home since the state of California opened it to the public in 1958. They have seen firsthand this shrine of beauty that was one of the social and cultural centers of the Western world. Millions more will visit it over the years and will see the fulfillment of one man's dream. William Randolph Hearst spent a lifetime collecting art. The extent of his effort can be appreciated when you realize that in 1932, Mr. Hearst was purchasing about 1/4 of the art on sale in the markets of the world. These treasures have been assembled here at San Simeon for the world to see. William Randolph Hearst died after a long illness in 1951. When Mr. Hearst left the hill for the last time, he asked the pilot to circle the hilltop again, so that he could have one last look at his enchanted hill. He never saw it again.